Hello once again from the Prim Reaper. I'm taking a bit of a break from the discussion on the APA's guidelines for men and boys. I have enough to talk about on that subject to keep me going for ages. Instead, I have a bit of a discussion that I wanted to have about one of the final readings from my last class. Before I get into the actual paper, I wanted to briefly touch on yet another issue that I take with feminist perspectives. The idea that the personal is political, and that everything is necessarily some kind of power struggle as a result. I think this is the root of the reason why feminist scholarship often comes across as so aggressive, when
everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
All of a sudden you begin to lose sight of the positive reasons behind people's actions because you're too busy trying to dig deeper to find secret, hidden, negative reasons instead. A man sitting with his knees apart on public transport isn't doing so because his anatomy makes it difficult to keep his legs closed. He's doing it to try and assert his manly power over others and hog all the space to himself. A woman who strives to keep herself thin and who dresses in promiscuous clothes isn't doing it because she wants to look good and get attention and feels confident in her appearance. She's doing it because she's a victim of patriarchal expectations of impossible standards of beauty. A new counselor isn't entering the profession because they want to help people work through their mental health concerns. No, they're entering the profession because they want to colonize their clients' minds. And thus is my introduction to the article I want to critique. Oh, you thought I was kidding? Without questioning the certainties embedded in our expertise, we may foster a colonial discourse, an apparatus of power whose strategic function is the creation of a space for a subject peoples. When this happens, our expertise and specified knowledge run the risk of subjugating rather than liberating. Under the banner of treatment, therapists and other professionals often descend upon families in much the same way that colonists descend upon a new land. Yeah.
Fuck this shit, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out. No thanks. Don't mind me. I'ma just grab my stuff and leave. Excuse me, please.
If you've been paying attention to social justice culture at all, you'll know that they really like to use the colonizing metaphor for a lot of things. So I suppose I shouldn't have been surprised when I encountered it in my readings. This isn't the first time I've seen this comparison, but it is certainly the most egregious. The title of the article is called Temptations of Power and Certainty, and the abstract reads as follows. In our search for guiding principles out of which to conduct therapy, we encounter two temptations of power and certainty. When therapists do not adequately account for the position of our clients, we fall prey to the temptation of certainty. When we attempt to impose corrections from such certainty, we fall victim to the temptation of power. Colonization occurs in therapy when our commitment to expert knowledge blinds us to the experience in the room. This paper offers suggestions for sidestepping power and certainty by contrasting therapies of power and certainty with therapies of curiosity and empowerment. So, as is illustrated in both the title and the abstract, the article is concerned primarily with two things: power and certainty. Before I get into my critique, I'm going to dig a little deeper into the article in order to give you all a better idea of what these people are talking about. Though therapy must begin somewhere, it must not take its beginnings or endings too seriously. Serious pursuit of certainty, how to size up and conduct therapy, runs the risk of producing rigidity or inflexibility in the practitioner and in the practice. White and Epstein speak of the power of normalized truths, discipline-related beliefs which are rigidly held, tacitly or implicitly, as self-evident and go unquestioned. These fundamental beliefs consist of regularities or rules of conduct which govern practice or define our discipline. However, they can also constitute positive obstacles in the enactment of therapy. These are the certainties sought after by the novice practitioner or rigidly enforced by the seasoned, knowledgeable veteran. They may be found in generic beliefs about human behavior or specific theories or schools of therapy. Power is evoked by and through such knowledge. Although power and certainty promises results, it may unwittingly bind us to the same damn thing over and over. In itself, I have no problem with the idea that we should challenge our notions of certainty. This is a value that I hold and frequently express in various ways in my regular day-to-day life and on this channel. We should regularly be challenging our own ideas and keeping an open mind to new ones. Regularly stress testing our views allows us not only to better defend them when faced with opposing ideas, but it also allows us to refine our views when we discover new facts or learn where we might have gone wrong. Holding rigidly to one's views in the face of conflicting information is a serious problem, not just in counseling, but in general. However, there are some insidious ways that this paper talks about this concept, especially in light of the way they go on to talk about the power aspect. First of all, in my experience at least, the counseling field is a discipline that goes out of its way to be welcoming to new ideas and new ways of doing things. There are so many different ways of doing therapy that an aspiring new counselor couldn't possibly hope to master them all. I'm sure they're out there, but I can't imagine a therapist that would definitively argue that their way of doing counseling is the one true certain way that will bring positive change to their clients' lives. I mean, for goodness sakes, it's written in our psychological code of ethics that we should be ready to provide the best service possible for our clients or be prepared to refer them to someone better suited to their needs if we can't meet them. Our discipline is not like medicine, where there's more or less a straightforward direction towards physical health. Mental health is generally much more complicated and diverse, and all but the most obtuse of psychologists will readily accept that one style of therapy might work well for one client, but not so much for another. The idea that there even exists a same damn thing over and over in therapy is so foreign to me because no two clients will experience the exact same problems the exact same way. So even trying to claim that there is a one true path forward for either of them makes no sense. I suppose if we want to all use our imaginations, we can envision a dull, lifeless caricature of a counselor who responds to every problem with, "Your issues are the result of you secretly wanting to get down with your mom." But I would wager to argue that very, very few counselors these days would hold such a single-minded, unflinching, and stalwart view of why their clients might have the problems they do. There are just so many different theories and schools of thought now that trying to claim that you have the way will undoubtedly net you 5 different professionals within a 50-mile radius willing to offer an alternate explanation. In a way, you can almost say that this is a blessing and a curse for the field. On the one hand, we have so many different approaches to counseling that we can often find a way that works for many different kinds of people with many different concerns, even if it might take a few tries to find the exact key that fits the lock. On the other hand, because we have so many different kinds of therapy, you may have to go toe-to-toe with skeptics who wonder if there's really even enough certainty in the discipline to really qualify as saying that we're effective in treating people's problems. This is especially so when you have evidence showing it's not necessarily the specific type of counseling that really makes the difference to clients, but the common factors between therapists, such as the emotional bond between a client and a counselor, a healing setting for confiding to take place, and an adaptive explanation for the client's problems that they can understand and accept. The nature of psychology as a soft science means that it's really not even appropriate to make claims of certainty about how to deal with one's issues. On the other hand, we don't want to fall into the trap of opening our minds so much that our brains fall out, so to speak. People are coming to us for advice after all, and if we have no modicum of confidence, or in this case, certainty, about whether what we're doing will help our clients, then what business do we have to be practicing in this field anyway? If we can't have any certainty that what we're doing will be helpful to people, then what would even be the point in their coming to us? While holding firm to our beliefs about a given theory is not going to be the best thing to do, arguing that there's no way we can have any certainty in any aspect of the counseling process is effectively damning the field to uselessness. Think about going to a doctor who's not certain about any effective treatments for your heart condition. What use would it be going to such a person? We can have a healthy respect for certain givens and knowns within a field without acting like it's our way or the highway. In fact, I would argue it's necessary. I want to be fair to these authors, though. This article was written in 1993, 26 years ago. Perhaps it was more common at the time to have counselors believing that their chosen style of practice was the be-all, end-all, but that sort of view is highly outdated today, so the cautionary tone of this paper feels exaggerated now, especially when we get into the next section, which is where my real issues begin to arise. The paragraph I read at the beginning of this video is the first part in the section discussing the supposed nature of power in the counseling relationship. I'm going to continue reading a bit from that section before I proceed. Families may respond to this colonizing process by acquiescence, retreat, or at times even revolt against the apparatuses of power. This sort of therapeutic colonization, then, is the process of unchecked power and certainty in action. Clients arrive for the therapeutic encounter rich in the resources of suffering and complaint. Like an underdeveloped nation, the client is ripe for colonization. This can occur as the therapist selects for attention those features of the client's story which articulate with therapist predisposition or expert knowledge. From a position of power and certainty, supported by social institutions and driven by the therapist's own need to adhere to certain theories about the client and therapy, the therapist ventures forth as colonizer. Okay, so brief pause right now. There are a number of reasons I take issue with the metaphor of colonialism in this context. There are many different instances of colonialism throughout world history, but the main examples that many people seem to like to focus on are either the colonization of the various tribes of Africa or the Native Americans of North America. First of all, when colonization did happen, the cultures facing colonization did not have a choice in the matter. It was a thing that was forced upon them. What were the colonizers attempting to do? Expand their territory. If they were spreading their way of life, you can argue that they were doing this incidentally. They weren't merely going forth into uncharted territory to show the people who lived there their enlightened ways of living out of the goodness of their hearts. And in many cases, the colonialists were doing terrible and violent things to the natives of the communities they took over. This metaphor absolutely doesn't track in counseling. People who go to counseling are doing so willingly. Not just willingly, but they're often paying for the privilege. They generally know, or at least have a sense, of what they'll be getting out of the relationship with us, whereas those being colonized were likely surprised and very much unaware of what was happening. It's not like our clients stumble into our clutches waiting for us to fill their heads with whatever we want. How insulting is it to think of clients' minds as passive receptacles for counselors to take over? Or, oh wait, maybe they're not just automatically assuming passivity. Let's move on to some choice phrases from the next section. Like a colonial of the Third World, however, the client may respond to colonization in a number of ways. Some clients are successful colonial subjects in that they seem to be predisposed to psychological insights and/or are sufficiently malleable. Much has been written in the literature about such a client. In fact, therapeutic colonizing mentality has gone so far as to define this population as the ideal or even exclusive group for therapy. Another response may be found among those clients or colonials who just don't get it. They cannot find a place within the power and certainty of the colonizer. Try as they might, they are unable to dismiss their naive traditions which have enabled them to survive the colonial vision. Unfortunately, in this scenario, problems seem to persist. Repeated attempts at treatment take on the feeling of the same damn thing over and over. Since these clients don't seem to get it, they become the white man's burden. White man's burden? What in the world are these guys even on about? Out of this second population, another group can emerge. Individuals already on the edge of the dominant culture. These are low-functioning families, long-term sufferers, individuals compelled to organize their lives around complaint, or young people with the most compelling desire to write their own story. In their tenacious commitment to personal knowledge and their own worldview, they take to the hills. Like guerrillas, they lock the colonizer into a drama of combat over power and certainty. So we appear to have two main options here. Either clients stupidly and uncritically accept the knowledge we counselors pass on to them from on high, like a blank canvas waiting lifelessly for us to paint our happy little therapeutic solutions upon them, or they valiantly hold firm to their beliefs that have obviously not really been working out for them so far if they're coming to therapy looking for help. In the face of our oppressive psychological explanations that threaten to overwhelm and overtake their very being as a separate human entity. Okay, first of all, this is a ridiculously patronizing view of counseling clients. These people aren't passive receptacles waiting to be filled, and while many, if not most, counseling clients are in a vulnerable position, it's insulting to imply that they wouldn't be able to resist information that truly doesn't suit them, and in the case that they do resist, to be able to leave therapy that isn't working for them. In fact, any ethical counselor would certainly work with such clients to try to improve the therapeutic relationship, refer them to a therapist that would better suit their needs, or otherwise suggest ending the counseling session so that the client is not being exploited and paying money for a service that is unhelpful. Secondly, what kind of a messed up worldview does it take to assume that counselors are going into this field in order to have power over their clients? You can see it all throughout this article in the kinds of language they use to describe us and the counseling process. Therapy begins with the therapist having the upper hand. Under the banner of treatment, therapists and other professionals often descend upon families in much the same way that colonists descend upon a new land. As good colonial subjects, they readily intertwine their destiny with that of the colonizer. As clients, they endure and persist with therapy, finally accepting the diagnosis, categorization, or labeling, gratefully making progress or getting better. This is such an uncharitable, inaccurate, and again, insulting view of the counseling profession. I have talked to many people, and I have never heard counselors expressing anything even remotely close to this kind of thought process. Every single person I've talked to has instead talked about a desire to help others get better, an interest in the human mind and thought processes, an interest in different counseling theories and the field of psychology itself, or a combination of all three. Frankly, I don't think an aspiring counselor who expresses pants-on-head ideas like calling difficult clients the white man's burden would get very far in today's psychological world. But then again, maybe I'm wrong there, given that this piece of garbage literature was being shared unironically as required reading in my current courses. But this is what I mean when I say that this weird focus on power just distorts things beyond all recognition. I'm sure very few, if any of you viewers, would have come to associate the idea of counseling with colonization on your own, for example. But when your worldview is saturated with this insidious notion that everything is about someone trying to keep someone else down, you lose the ability to trust in the good intentions of others, and explanations like these become commonplace. At best, this is just needless seeking of a dragon to fight that doesn't exist at all, and at worst, this is imputing negative intentions onto counselors, mental weakness onto the clients, and sullying the field of psychology as a whole. I'm sure that there are some who will argue that this is just cautionary literature about the abuse of power in the field, but I would say it's like writing cautionary literature to kindergarten teachers about the importance of not beating their students. I mean, come on now. I'm going to leave it at that. I just couldn't resist the rant on this weird old article. As you know, I'm passionate about my field and my work, so when something like this comes up, I've got to stand up against it. It's sad that this kind of thinking has become so commonplace in academia, but it's not going to go away unless enough people challenge it. So here I am. I'm challenging it. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.